or aggressive, the sound of coins hitting marble. Year 127 CE. You're standing in your father's atrium, pressed against the cold wall while three men circle you. You can't speak. You can barely breathe. Your only job right now is to stand still while they evaluate. One man lifts your chin, checks your teeth like you're a horse at auction. The second pulls back your hair, examines your scalp for disease. The third asks your father a question you can't quite hear. Your father nods. More coins exchange hands. You're 14 years old. 3 days ago, you were laughing with your sisters in the garden. This morning, your mother braided your hair and cried. She wouldn't tell you why. Now you understand. You've just been sold, not metaphorically, literally. Your father negotiated your price for 6 months. The contract is signed. The dowry is counted. And the man who bought you, you met him once, for 20 minutes. He's 41 years old. Welcome to the Roman marriage market, where daughters weren't given away, they were sold. And what came after the sale? That's the part history books deleted from every textbook. 7 days ago, you were still a child. You studied Homer with your tutor. You played knucklebones with your younger sister. You fed the birds in the courtyard every morning. Your name was Claudia Tertia, third daughter of Claudius Marcellus, a minor Roman official who spent his entire career trying to climb the social ladder. You had value, but not the kind you thought. You weren't valuable because you were smart or kind or talented. You were valuable because you were young, healthy, and most importantly, a virgin. In Rome, that made you a commodity. Property that could be traded to secure your father's political future. The man who bought you is named Gaius Sulpicius Rufus, a grain merchant, wealthy enough to matter, connected enough to advance your father's career. He has a house on the Esquiline Hill. He's been married twice before. Both wives died in childbirth. You don't love him. Love isn't the point. This is business, a merger of families documented like the sale of land or livestock. And you're the asset being transferred. This wasn't a unique horror. This was standard practice. For over 700 years, Rome operated the most sophisticated marriage market in the ancient world. Here's how it worked. When a Roman girl reached puberty, typically around 12 to 14 years old, her father would begin negotiations. He'd identify potential buyers, husbands, who could advance the family's social or economic position. The negotiations could take months. Dowry amounts were calculated based on the girl's age, physical appearance, family connections, and most critically, her virginity status. A verified virgin was worth significantly more. Once terms were agreed, the marriage contract was signed. This wasn't a romantic ceremony, it was a legal document transferring ownership. Roman law called it conventio in manum, literally coming into the hand. The bride passed from her father's legal control to her husband's. But here's what made Rome's system uniquely brutal. The transfer wasn't complete until verified, and verification required inspection. If this story grips you, drop a like and subscribe. It takes a second and helps us pull more voices out of the silence. Weird Roman history doesn't sanitize the past. We show you what actually happened, because the truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable. The inspection happened in stages. Each stage was documented. Each stage had witnesses. Because in Rome, a marriage wasn't valid until the property transfer was verified. Stage 1, the pre-negotiation examination. Before your father could finalize terms, you underwent a medical inspection. A physician or midwife, always female for unmarried girls, would examine you to confirm your virginity. The results were documented on wax tablets that became part of the marriage contract. The examination wasn't gentle. Roman medical texts describe the techniques with clinical precision. Soranus of Ephesus, a 2nd century physician, wrote detailed instructions on how to verify virginity through physical examination. These texts still exist. They're graphic. They leave no ambiguity about what was involved. Stage 2. The family inspection. Once the medical verification was complete, the prospective husband's family would conduct their own evaluation. You'd be brought to their home, dressed in white, and presented for assessment. They checked everything. Your teeth, because dental health indicated overall condition. Your hair, your skin, your posture. They'd ask you questions to evaluate your temperament. They'd watch how you walked, how you spoke, how you held yourself. Pliny the Younger, in his letters, describes attending such an inspection for his friend's daughter. He writes about it with the same casual tone he'd use to describe evaluating a horse. She appeared healthy, spoke properly, and showed appropriate modesty. The family approved the match. Stage 3. The wedding ceremony. This is where it gets worse. The ceremony itself was public. Hundreds of guests, priests sacrificing animals. Your father speaking the ritual words that transferred ownership. You wore a flame-colored veil, the flammium, and a white tunic tied with a special knot called the nodus herculaneus, the knot of Hercules. That knot had a purpose. Only your husband could untie it. On your wedding night, in front of witnesses. Let that sink in. Your wedding night wasn't private. The pronuba, an older married woman, would oversee the consummation. She'd remain in the room or just outside the door, ready to provide testimony if the marriage was ever legally challenged. Slave attendants would wait in the corridor with basins of water and clean cloths for afterward. The stated purpose was verification, to ensure the marriage was properly consummated, to confirm that you were indeed a virgin as certified, to document that the property transfer was complete. Valerius Maximus, a first-century historian, describes these practices matter-of-factly in his memorable doings and sayings. He doesn't express horror or disgust. He simply states this is how marriages were completed according to proper Roman custom. Stage 4. The morning after examination. At dawn, the physician would return. This final examination confirmed consummation had occurred. The results were documented. The pronuba provided formal testimony regarding what she witnessed. Only then was the marriage legally complete. All of this, every stage, was recorded. Wax tablets documented the virgin verification. Contracts listed the dowry amount. Witness testimonies confirmed proper consummation. The documentation could be referenced years later if any aspect of the marriage was disputed. Think about what that means. Your most intimate moments, documented like a grain shipment. Your body, evaluated like livestock. Your value, calculated in denarii and political connections. And here's the most chilling part. This wasn't hidden. This wasn't secret. This was normal, expected, required. Roman fathers bragged about securing good matches for their daughters. Roman mothers prepared their daughters for these inspections, teaching them how to stand, how to speak, how to submit properly when the examinations came. No one thought it was wrong. It was simply how things were done. How they'd always been done. How Rome ensured bloodlines were pure and property transfers were legitimate. So why didn't anyone stop it? Why didn't mothers protect their daughters? Why didn't fathers refuse to sell them? The answer is the same answer that explains most historical atrocities. Everyone was trapped in a system bigger than themselves, and the system made resistance impossible. Let's start with the fathers. In theory, a Roman father held absolute power, patria potestas, over his children. He could refuse any marriage. He could keep his daughters unmarried forever. In practice, refusing to arrange marriages meant social death for the entire family. Roman society operated on a foundation of networks and alliances. Your family's status depended on your connections. Those connections were built through marriage. A father who refused to marry off his daughters was a father who couldn't be trusted to fulfill social obligations. Cicero's letters reveal the pressure fathers faced. He writes about negotiating marriages for his daughter Tullia, expressing discomfort with some aspects of the process. But he never refused, because refusing meant destroying his political career and his son's future. The mothers were even more trapped. Roman women had no legal authority over their children. Your mother couldn't override your father's decision. She couldn't refuse the marriage. She couldn't protect you from the inspections. All she could do was prepare you, teach you how to endure, warn you not to resist because resistance only made everything worse. Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi brothers, was famous for her virtue and wisdom. Yet she arranged marriages for her daughters following the exact same system. She wept when they left, but she still sent them. And what about you? Could you refuse? Legally, no. Roman law didn't require a bride's consent until the late Empire. Before that, marriage was a contract between your father and your husband. You were the property being transferred, not a party to the negotiation. Some girls tried to refuse anyway. We know this because Roman legal texts discuss the penalties. Disobedient daughters could be disowned, disinherited, or in extreme cases killed. Patria potestas included the right to execute your own children. More commonly, refusal meant social destruction. You'd be returned to your father's house as damaged goods. No respectable man would marry you after that. You'd live as a dependent your entire life. A burden to your family, a cautionary tale for other girls. The system had an answer for everything. Object to the inspection? You're immodest, unmarriageable. Refuse the marriage. You're disobedient, worthless. Try to run away? You're a criminal, hunted down and punished. Even the witnesses who observed these inspections were trapped. The pronuba who oversaw your wedding night wasn't a sadist. She was a married woman fulfilling a social obligation. If she refused, she'd be seen as subverting Roman custom. The physicians who performed examinations weren't perverts. They were medical professionals following established procedures. Refusing would mean losing their practice and their reputation. Everyone had a reason. Everyone had an excuse. And the machine kept running, consuming girls generation after generation for over 700 years. We know all this because the Romans documented everything. They were meticulous record keepers who wrote down details other civilizations kept secret. Pliny, the Younger's letters describe marriage negotiations and family inspections. He writes about them casually, mentioning them alongside dinner parties and business deals. Cyrannus of Ephesus wrote medical texts explaining examination techniques. His work, Gynecology, still exists in multiple manuscript copies. It's disturbingly detailed. Valerius Maximus recorded marriage customs in Memorable Doings and Sayings, treating them as examples of proper Roman tradition worth preserving. Legal texts like the Digest of Justinian discuss marriage contracts, dowry calculations, and what happened when marriages were disputed. The legal language is dry, technical, treating human beings like agricultural equipment. Even tombstones tell the story. Inscriptions frequently mention the age of marriage. Married at 13, married at 12, married at 14, died in childbirth at 15. In 2003, archaeologists excavating a Roman villa outside Pompeii found a locked wooden chest. Inside were marriage contracts from 5 different families, preserved by volcanic ash. The contracts listed inspection results, dowry amounts, and witness testimony confirming consummation. One contract for a girl named Lucia power. Women like Fulvia, who commanded armies, or Clodia, who openly took lovers and divorced multiple husbands. But even these powerful women couldn't change the marriage market for common girls. Fulvia married for political advantage. Clodia's freedom came from inherited wealth and family connections most women never had. For the average Roman girl, nothing changed. Not for 700 years. So when did it end? And why don't we learn about this in history class? The practices began fading in the 4th and 5th centuries CE as Christianity transformed Roman society. The church introduced new concepts, women having souls equal to men, marriage as sacred union rather than property transfer, the requirement of consent from both parties. But the transition took centuries and was never complete. As late as the 6th century, the Emperor Justinian's legal reforms still referenced inspection practices, trying to limit rather than eliminate them. The erasure began almost immediately. Christian historians who wrote about Rome's past were embarrassed by pagan marriage customs. They softened descriptions, used euphemisms, or simply omitted details they found too shameful to record. St. Augustine, writing in the 5th century, mentions Roman marriage customs only to condemn them. But his condemnations are vague, lacking the specific details earlier sources provided. He writes that pagan marriage rites were too shameful to describe, then doesn't describe them. Medieval monks who copied Roman texts often edited out explicit passages. A 9th century copy of Pliny's letters has sections carefully scraped away, the parchment reused for psalms. The removed sections discussed marriage inspections. By the Renaissance, when scholars rediscovered classical texts, they found a fragmentary record. They knew Rome had marriage customs that differed from their own, but the specific details had been systematically removed. Modern textbooks continue the erasure. They mention Roman marriage, usually focusing on romantic stories like Antony and Cleopatra. They show images of wedding ceremonies with smiling couples and scattered flowers. They don't mention the inspections. They don't discuss the ages. They don't explain that Roman marriage was documented property transfer of female bodies. Why? Because it complicates our relationship with Rome. We want Rome to be the foundation of Western civilization, the source of law and philosophy and engineering. Acknowledging what Rome did to its women complicates that narrative. But the evidence still exists, in fragments, in awkward silences in historical texts, in archaeological finds that reveal what written records tried to hide. The marriage contracts from Pompeii are in the Naples National Archaeological Museum. You can see them, read them, see the exact denarii amounts paid for 13-year-old girls. The medical texts of Soranus are available in translation. You can read his instructions for examining virgins, written with clinical detachment that makes it somehow worse. The laws in Justinian's Digest are preserved in multiple manuscript copies. You can trace exactly how marriage contracts worked, how inspections were mandated, how witnesses provided testimony. The evidence is there. We just choose not to look at it, because looking at it means confronting what civilization actually meant for half the population. So why does this story matter 2,000 years later? Because it teaches us something terrifying about how societies normalize evil. Rome didn't think it was evil. Romans thought they were civilized, sophisticated, the pinnacle of human achievement. And they were in some ways. They built aqueducts that still function today. They wrote philosophy that shaped Western thought. They created legal systems modern nations still reference. And they also sold 13-year-old girls like livestock and documented every transaction with bureaucratic precision. The lesson isn't that Rome was uniquely evil. The lesson is that civilization and brutality can coexist. That a society can build monuments and write poetry while treating half its population as property. The patterns are still here, different faces, different places, but the same structure, systems that reduce people to commodities, bureaucracies that make horror routine, everyone having an excuse for why they can't stop it. Hannah Arendt called it the banality of evil, but Rome perfected it 2,000 years before she coined the phrase. They turned the sale of daughters into paperwork. They made violation a legal requirement. They convinced everyone this was normal, proper, the foundation of civilized society. And it continued for 700 years, because systems don't fall because they're evil. They fall by accident when someone finally says enough, or when external forces destroy them. The girl from the beginning of this story, Claudia Tertia, she was real. We don't know what happened to her after her marriage. Her name appears in one contract, one fragment, then vanishes from history. But she existed. She stood in that atrium while men evaluated her. She wore that wedding veil while strangers watched. She endured what history books deleted. This is weird Roman history. We don't sanitize the past. We show you what actually happened, because remembering is the only tribute we can still offer. If this story reached you, drop a like and subscribe. Next time, we're revealing what happened to Vestal virgins who were accused, the underground chamber, the 3 days of bread and water, the live burial Rome used to murder its holiest women. The past isn't dead. It's waiting in the dark, waiting for someone to remember.